Bad Life Podcast! You're listening to the Bad Life Podcast, your number one guide on how to run a profitable band. Here are your hosts, Pete Stannard and Adam West, the Wizard of Rock!
Yeah!
And welcome. Yes, I've always want a little round of applause.
It's a jamming track, Pete. Well done, mate. A nice intro, that is.
Thank you. Thank you. I did it with my fair hands, and I did not use AI. More importantly, which this episode 2, is all about. It's about AI music, and there's so much for us to talk about. It's going to be a two-parter because we are going to take two technologies. One's called Endel and one's called Suno. Hopefully I'm pronouncing that right. Suno or Suno?
It looks like Suno, don't it?
Suno, yeah, okay. But all will be revealed as we go through it. So we're talking about AI-generated music, and I wanted to keep the conversation technologically driven. If it's just a broad, general conversation, then we're just going to write it off and be like, no, this is rubbish. We're all going to die.
Well, we do say that.
We'll rise up. we do say that. The robots are going to rise up and kill us all. That will be the end of it, which may happen, but not now.
It's a very informative discussion about all things AI, and I think people will gravitate towards it for sure.
I think they certainly should, especially if you are a music artist in, I think, specific genre. I think if you're in pop and hip hop in particular, this is going to be very interesting for you because we actually do live in part 2. We generate music live, but we're generating rock and metal music live, and the way in which the audience will accept AI music is going to be very different for rock and metal as it is, I think, for pop and hip hop, where that sort of backing tracky sort of thing and processed stuff is far more acceptable to the audience. So if you're in those genres, I would very much sit down and listen to these next 2 episodes. In music production, isn't the newest thing. Landar has been mastering using AI since 2014, so over 10 years. So in music production, it's not massively new. I know lots of mastering engineers that absolutely hate Landar for obvious reasons, but they don't feel threatened by it, which is quite interesting because they know that they can produce something better, something more human, something more with a deeper connection to the artists. And I think that's an important thing to keep in mind with this. But what I want to do is I didn't want it to be like a really broad conversation where we just kind of, we're like old men shouting at the clouds, going, we hate you, AI.
What's wrong with that? I'm very good at doing that. Thank you very much.
So I wanted to ground the conversation in technology that is affecting the music industry right now as we speak.
Yeah.
And so there's two pieces of technology. There's an app called Endel, which is produces functional music, and a website called Suno that is a text-based
AI that's a bit more like ChatGPT, or a bit more like Mid-Journey for those in the art world. So basically, you just type in a prompt and it regurgitates for you. So
you don't have to use your own brain then.
well, you have to use your brain to type in your prompt, I suppose. But we will get into Sono kind of separately, because what I want to do is actually generate some music from them, because you can for free. And I think we should be open-minded enough to listen to it and say, this is good, this is bad, this is indifferent, this will work in this way and that way.
I'm ready to slag it off. I mean, I'm ready to debate it.
You're ready to be open-minded enough.
Absolutely.
Okay. So let's start with this app called Endel. Okay.
Yeah.
So just to describe the app, it's an app that creates what would be considered functional music. That's how it would be categorized, I suppose, on Spotify. Endel themselves, according to their website, they describe the music as it's a sound wellness soundscape. Spotify have a problem with, or certainly had a problem with, functional music. The issue bad actors would do is they would have 30 seconds of white noise, upload that, and that would generate royalties over and over again, because people would listen to white noise for hours and hours. They put it on mainly for their children to help them sleep. So this is what functional music is. In Endel's position, what they do is they've worked heavily with neuroscientists to help with sleep, focus, and relaxation. That's their three main categories for their music. What Spotify did, they recognized that there was some bad actors in there, because what they were doing the 30 seconds to generate a royalty. People would be streaming this for a very long time. And it became actually a very big problem, because organized crime would use this. They would have what's called device farms.
This is mental.
Hundreds of devices, and then they could launder money through the DSPs.
That's crazy, man. When I read that, I was just like, what? What am I reading? Device farms. But they've explained it a bit more. I'm just like, people are always looking for a loophole, a money loophole, or somewhere to make money where some big rich corporate entity or elitist isn't going to try and go for a power grab, are they? Quick, the infidels are making a bit of money. Quick, get in there and tax it or something.
Are you saying the rich are like organized crime?
Ooh.
Oh. This is a controversial position from Mr. West.
Interesting. You should throw that one.
Interesting, yeah.
Yeah,
there are similarities, actually.
There are similarities.
There are similarities.
From what I can gather, right, I mean, just to elaborate on that briefly before you carry on, right, so I was reading through some of the notes about this, and I'm thinking, honestly, right, what is it really about? I mean, for me, I think it's always about money, right? If you've got any kind of company, well, what I found with a lot of the big ones, like if you've got like Spotify, I think of the others, but they're billionaires now, right? So it's a money making thing, and like you said,
I think Apple have made a bit of money over the years.
Yeah,
to be honest, so.
It's what gets me is when they start telling us, they're like, look, it's like, you've no interest in me as an artist. You're interested in my money. Let's be honest about it, really. And when you get behind this, like what was interesting about the video that you sent me to watch about the two of the individuals talking about it, I'm going, by about halfway in, I'm like, it's a careful play on words, but it's really about the money, guys. Let's not ignore the fact there. And when you're talking about these device farms, it's like, no one can argue and say, no, that's that they were doing that for the music fans. I'm like, no, multiple laptops generating music constantly and then filtering, laundering money or whatever. I'm like, I mean, that's somebody looking for a loophole to make some money, isn't it? It's like, well, it's not a. What happened to the good old days? It's just like, it's just escalated. And then they were talking about AI and music. And if I'm honest, it's quite new for me. I try to ignore it. Doesn't mean that it doesn't get used in my daily life, but I don't really pay much interest in it. It's like, somebody goes, oh, look, chat GDP. I'm like, oh, and what's all that about then?
Yeah, I mean, if you've not got any reason to use it, then why would you? But something like this technology and the thing with the app and the fact that the major artists are supplying music for the AI to reimagine their songs. So like James Blake and Black. I mean, Black's a Grammy award-winning artist. So they've allowed their music to be reimagined by the AI. So it's not like it's not like they're just kind of typing in, give me some music, please, Mr. AI. Right. What they're doing is they have 6 in-house composers, and then they work with major artists. And the artists and the composers will write a song, and then that song gets fed into the AI, and the AI will then generate music using the criteria for the cognitive stuff. So that's kind of the idea of the app. Now, there's a different slant to this as well, because what they've started doing is putting that music onto Spotify. So the music you get on the app isn't necessarily the music you get on Spotify. So the argument, or the thing that kind of really piqued my interest on this, is that what you've got is you've got a company that's generating music, and literally, I think, my personal opinion, is they're flooding the streaming sites, because last year alone, Endel released over 2,000 songs. And why is that important? Well, it's important because the way the royalty system works, because it's a pro rata royalty system, basically what happens is you've got a pool of money that's generated by streaming, and then it's divvied out to the artists depending on streaming numbers that they have. What you have is that my subscription, the £10 that I pay to Spotify, some of that money is going to Endel,
right,
as an artist, but I haven't listened to their music. And I think this is the problem that a lot of artists have, and a lot of people are coming from, is that why should my subscription go to artists that I don't listen to? But then
that's a valid point.
The other argument is, it's like, well, I don't listen to Taylor Swift either, but she's going to get a lot of a lot of money. It's one of those things, is that even if you're going to move to a user-centric system, which a lot of people are calling for, the downside to that is that you've still got the streaming numbers problem. So the amount of streams that you generate then becomes much more of a focal point. So if you're not generating any streams, you're just not going to get any money at the end of the day.
Yeah, but this is the thing with Spotify, though. See, they've recently, as you've mentioned, they've dropped the percentage that they pay people now, because, and I don't know whether this is a factor in it, but they're like, right, get your music on Spotify, because like you've got a billionaire that's generated this platform. He can pump as much resources, time, and money into it. There's no option. It's no issue. He gets it up and running. It works really well because he's invested well in it. And then they're like, right, oh, by the way, we're only going to pay you 0.0.1% or 2% of money based on how many times people stream your track. I'm like, right, okay. How's that fair? Like,
I don't, and this again, this raises another question: is that who decides what's fair and what isn't fair? And I talk about this quite a lot in my content. It's like because whenever I bring up Spotify's royalties, I always get a load of people in the comments going, "Oh, it's so unfair." And every time I put back, well, what is fair? What's fair to me here in the UK could be very different to someone in a small village in Africa, and what's fair to me here in the UK would be very different for Taylor Swift over there in the US. A billionaire artist is going to want more money for their music than me, or what's considered to be a level of fairness, as it were. So if you've got an artist that's invested hundreds of thousands, if not millions, into the machine of generating those streams, should that royalty reflect that investment, or should it reflect artistic integrity, or what? Do you see what I'm saying? I don't quite. No one's ever been able to answer what is fair and what isn't fair. So I always kind of look at it from the point of view of this is the terms and conditions that this company have set out. If you don't like it, don't put it on Spotify. It's a choice that you've got.
I know. It's the lesser of two evils, though, for a musician who wants the world to listen to their music. So the world revolves around money, period. So, if you don't invest money, you don't get anything back. And I suppose that goes for what I'm doing, what you're doing too. So I've invested probably up to £1,000 into this album I'm working on. Now, am I expecting to get that money back? Not really, because, it takes such a lot of investment, time and advertising to get people into what you're doing. And predominantly, a lot of it is down to gigging. You have to gig a lot so people know you. And then everything picks up. But I think in terms of a product, you have to invest. So and I know Spotify do with the playlist, you sent me a load of playlist things. Everybody got back to me wanted some sort of fee. So I was like, okay, fine. So if I invest that money, I'm now on a lot of playlists. I'm going to get back something, probably more listens, more streams, and more followers because I've paid for it. Because the world revolves around money. So I don't think it's unfair or wrong to even say or ask or expect a good result if you're putting money in. If somebody says, well, I didn't put anything in, it's not fair. I'm like, okay, well, the world revolves around money. Somebody wants to make money. If you're not investing, you're not going to get any comeback.
Yeah.
I think that's fair. At least a fair statement.
It's fair. But I think Spotify's argument would be, well, if you look at it, if you zoom out and you look at it purely from a shared perspective, we give 70% of the money coming into Spotify to the artists. Our split is 30%. So I suppose then it just kind of comes from, well, is that a fair split? Should they be taking less? Or they may argue, well, maybe it should be a 50-50 split. Who knows? They're struggling for my Spotify in particular. I
that's
wouldn't be
interesting.
surprised if they're going to be going bankrupt at some point. They're upping their prices in May, which you very kindly sent me a snapshot of.
Probably not something you wanted to hear, but I thought it was quite interesting.
No, well, I knew that. I got an email from them saying that these things are changing. And
do you think that's probably worth a conversation for another podcast about?
I think so. Spotify and how because if you think about what you're actually getting from Spotify, You're getting access to pretty much every piece of music that's ever been produced. Could you imagine trying to buy that on physical? I think it would cost you a bit more than £12 a month that it's going up to. Yeah, that sort of thing. So it depends on perspective and things like that. But I don't want to go down too much of a rabbit hole. I think you're right there. I think we need to kind of put it back onto track with this app.
Well, I'd like to talk about it, but like, today's conversation about the AI, and that's a big topic with music in itself. Like, and for me, I mean, back to the Endel and the video that I watched. It was very interesting. I mean, like the end, for me, I just thought, okay, it's very clever what you're doing. It doesn't matter what you say, and I think a lot of it's just BS to hide the fact that you've found a way to make money through a streaming platform. And that's all we do as people. We're always looking for a way to make a little bit of money because either the government or somebody else is taking it from us. Which I suppose you could argue is like, okay, well, that's fair because it is difficult to be alive right now and survive in the current situation. So again, is it a good thing? Is it a bad thing? I suppose it's like most things. It depends how it's used, isn't it? And, when you talk about these artists, I mean, like, okay, so AI, right? I mean, so you ask AI to generate this music for you, right? Which is what one of the artists like James Blake or Black has done. And you're like, well, why? I suppose my question is why? Why AI? Why? What's wrong with us? Seriously,
That's
I mean,
one of the questions. I think their answer to that would be that the neuroscience we couldn't write songs to fit the neuroscience. So there's no way the algorithms that they use to generate the music is geared towards helping people focus, sleep, and relax.
And that's fine. I understand the science of what he was trying to get to on it. And I thought helping people with music is great. I listened to some of those frequency, what they call it, solfeggio, is it, or something?
Right. Yeah.
They're basically binaural beats. There's pitch and frequencies you listen to, it helps you get to sleep. I'm thinking, yeah, it's great. I think they found a nice little loophole to generate some money and then argued it by saying, well, no, actually we're using science, and now it's basically this science should get royalties or something to that effect, wasn't it?
Yeah.
I was just like, what? We listen to you.
I suppose, and I'm trying to play devil's advocate here.
Yeah, sure.
What his perspective on it is that he has very talented software engineers, and and tech guys that are very, very good at what they do. In the same way that you have very talented songwriters. So why shouldn't the tech guys get recompensed for their hard work any more than a talented songwriter should? And he's putting that into the same perspective. Now, another element to this that I thought was interesting is that the two major labels are working with them, Universal and Warner. And it wasn't too long ago that the head of, I think it was Warner, was saying that functional music shouldn't be on the streaming sites because there's no, an Ed Sheeran song shouldn't generate the same royalty as Rain on the Roof, I think was to paraphrase his quote, as it were. So it's interesting that those heads of those companies are now working with functional music.
They're not short of a few quid, are they? Let's be honest.
No, but I think this is again opens up a bigger debate on how the people in what you could say in power,
Yeah.
so the major labels, how they react to disruption technology in the industry, which is always going to happen because we're such a technologically driven industry. So the disruption thing is always going to be, and it's almost, for me, it's almost like, did we learn nothing from Napster? When Napster was doing the file sharing stuff and they were very much sitting on their hands about enforcing copyright and all this sort of stuff with them. And I personally, I think they were trying to see if they could just kind of get rid of their distribution because it's very expensive to distribute. If they could, everything just go online, well, you haven't got to worry about plants, you haven't got to worry about pressing, you haven't got to worry about artwork, you haven't got to worry about logistics, you haven't got to worry about all this other stuff. It's very costly.
This is,
and that's where it kind of is sitting with me. They kind of, I think they're seeing what they can do.
yeah, the money is the greens again, isn't it?
It is,
Oh, it's costing
it
us the money. I'm like, you set up a business. I mean, you guys were two of the biggest music producers going. Is it Universal and Warner Brothers? Well, I'm just like, so, okay, and what, you're not making enough money? It's like, yeah, but if we go digital, I'm like, okay, like we've all seen the movies, right? And I know it's not that much off topic, but we all seen the movies. We know what happens when you hand everything over to the AI system. Bad shit happens, and I think we got.
I was expecting a Terminator to come.
Well, yeah, exactly right.
Come walking through,
but it's true because you got all these people now. They're all saying they're going, "Oh, we shouldn't be dabbling with AI." And I'm like, no. I'd like to cover something since we're talking about AI because it's quite relevant too.
okay.
If these companies turn around and they go digital, and then all the production stuff is gone out the window. It's like, it's too costly. It's like, right, okay, so what happens to that organic, natural thing that we used to have? Do we all just live in cyberspace and become these, artificial individuals that live in the grand oasis from like Steven Spielberg's film, Ready Player, which, by the way, was an amazing film. I just thought the concept idea behind, I'm like, well, we're going down roads like that. Then there's the film Surrogates with Bruce Willis. And I'm just like, well, we're not far off. And I'm thinking, the way this is going, eventually, I mean, look, guilty of sin. I've sat here for the better part of half a year trying to set up my online shop because I'm trying to find a nice balance, a nice equilibrium between the organic, natural world and the digital world. And if for myself, who's been into music a long time, and you, we have to find, if you don't sort of work and conform to the times, you get left behind. And I think what's really important about this AI thing, absolutely, is to find the balance. So you've got all the big techs, Elon Musk and all, turn around and saying, we shouldn't be doing AI. I'm like, so then don't do it. It's really quite simple. Don't do it. But if we don't do it, somebody else will. I'm like, okay, so just don't do it then. If you're that worried.
Sorry to interject, there is a slight irony that Elon Musk, one of the lead investors in OpenAI.
I know, right? You're like, okay, what? Because a lot of what he says, I'm just like, right, okay, mate. I'm sure that it always feels like there's somebody behind him going, now, facial expression, now, hand up. Because like he just stands there and then all of a sudden he just sort of like, he goes into like a, somebody's just twigging his buttons. I'm just like, and I'm just like, okay, fine. So now we're doing AI. Now, because I've been involved and busy with other things, I haven't really paid an awful lot of attention. That doesn't mean I'm not using it. But I haven't gone, it's a new fad, got to really get into it. And then exploited it to the point where, like we all do when Facebook burst onto the scenes, we're like, post, picture. And I'm like, what am I doing? I'm no longer living in the real world, and I'm not there with the AI thing. I have used AI for a couple of things, but I'm a late starter, right? So I've used that chat AI thing, which I just dropped off my taskbar as well. Oddly enough, just taking up room. It's the voice. It's the American actor voice that you always hear on the Instagram and TikTok videos. 11 Labs. It's called 11 Labs, right?
Okay.
So, and I got onto that because somebody had turned around and said, "Have you ever wondered who does the voice for that famous voice that we've all heard on videos on TikTok and Instagram?" And I'm like, "Yeah, because it really draws you in. It's quite appealing. Some people's
Quite
voices,
prolific,
yeah. Anyway, it's an AI. I was like, "Oh, really?" I'm like, "Oh, that's quite different." I was disappointed. I was, because I thought it was a genuine individual, and I was
It
like,
goes
"Okay."
to show how good the AI is.
I'm not doubting it, Pete. I'm not doubting it. I think it's an amazing tool, right? But what I'm trying to get to is that I was like, okay, fine. So I got into it, and I was like, well, let's give it a go. Everybody's going on about it, and I'm like probably a year behind now, and I'm just discovering this and thinking, great.
Yeah, in AI terms, you're like 10 years behind the curve.
Exactly right. Everybody else is exploited at the crap, and still trying to do it. And I'm just like, okay, well, what's it about? Go on, let's have a look at it. So I get into it, and I'm like, okay, this is cool. But what I've done, I've used it as a way of helping and supporting, rather than use it to completely change, like to rewrite music, to get more money, to take me out of the picture so we can make money on the side, and I can spend all my day playing games or whatever. I'm thinking, well, that's not what we should be using it for, surely. I mean, everybody demonized AI, and it's incredibly demonized on the films. For me, I think in terms of using it to support and help, yeah, we can do. It's like all tech, though. Who controls the tech is what basically ends up it becoming what it does become. And that's usually like, oh, look, it's corrupted. It's like, well, yeah, because you've got some, I don't know, big tech billionaire that's, only interested in money. And then basically your basic humanity is gone, and then all of a sudden it gets exploited and used and abused, and then that's it, and I just think a lot of this, I don't think AI is bad for what we're using it in, because I've just been dabbling with it in certain areas, right? So, and obviously we're going to be addressing the Suno AI thing and trying that out in a minute. But what I wanted to do is just talk a little bit about what I think about it and how I've used it, because I think a lot of people are probably using it a hell of a lot more than I am. And I use that 11 Labs as a bit of a laugh and a joke to see how to put something down I said and get somebody who can speak a little bit better, that pulls people in, and that might bring in a few more people. So I was using it as a tool to try and aid something. And I think that's kind of cool. Other than that, I don't think I would like to use it to completely rewrite music. And here's another interesting one as well, right? Because I got a program on my phone called Power Director, a really powerful app that's like Adobe, but probably not very high end. And so there's a little tool on there, and it's like AI. Generate your face or your body into an AI character. And I'm like, oh, and they've all been doing this for a long time. And it's boring, to be honest. And I look at it and go, oh, God, another AI on Facebook, whatever, not interested. But I looked at this on my phone and going, oh, I don't know, just give it a go. And it's got a set of scenes on there. Like, so you can have military, zombie, is it Amami? Anime. Sorry.
Yeah,
Butchered
it's
that.
like a Japanese cartoon
That's
thing.
it. Yeah. And I went, okay. And then it come to like a zombie one. And I can't, and here's the other thing. Like the zombie thing's been used to death, and I can't stand it, right? And I looked at this thing. It was like a hybrid of a futuristic post-apocalyptic world / zombie thing. And I seen it, and I thought, well, visually, that doesn't look like The Walking Dead, because that thing just has been like bled dry. So I went, I'm going to give that a go and see what happens, right? And I put our image on there. It generated, I looked and I went, That's actually pretty
It's quite
good,
nice.
isn't it?
Quite like
Yeah.
that.
So, yeah, and I basically
Yeah.
fashioned that then and used AI to help do what I'm doing now with the shop and this fictitious world I've created. And then I took a step back and I went, I think that's the correct way to use a piece of technology, right?
Okay.
So the end point to my little conversation slash rant, really, I suppose, is to say that like it's all good and well. I think you have to use it the right way. And I think in our hands it can be, but when you put it into the hands of the, all the people we know that tend to abuse and destroy things, and then gain lots of money for it, I think that's when it all goes bad, and history repeats itself with time and time again with scenarios and situations like that. So, as an individual artist, I think maybe it's a good thing if it's used and balanced right. But
Yeah.
I don't think it should be used to completely rewrite music and then gain a shared ton of royalties for it. Because I'm
Yeah.
like, ain't you abusing that? Is an AI going to fight back? You know what I mean?
I see what you're saying, but
So, yeah.
to kind of counter that,
Ooh.
if we had a graphic artist sat here and you told them that, so they'd be like, well, actually, now you've just taken a job away from an artist in the world of graphics.
Right.
So that disruption is happening very, very much in the world of graphic art and especially logo making and stuff like that. I could go on Midjourney and knock out a logo in under 30 seconds. Yeah. Now, there are artists that are specifically logo makers, and that job essentially is gone.
Right. And so
Because of AI.
I'll interject with something in a minute once you've
Okay.
finished. Okay.
So as a counter to your example, and I'm not trying to pull you're down in any way, but I suppose they could argue from a graphic design point of view, they could argue, well, it's exactly the same as what's happening in our industry. Why wouldn't it happen in the music industry? Why wouldn't this become commonplace? Why wouldn't this be integrated as a part of your workflow and things like that? And the levels of extreme will just be a spectrum as opposed to something that's always done. And I think that's where this is probably gonna, at some point, the industry or the people who appreciate music will fall down on, is where in that spectrum you're gonna sit, as it were. Because I think heavily AI'd music is going to be, especially if it's like a text prompt sort of thing, it's going to come down to what's fed into the AI. So if what's being fed into the AI is, give me a pop punk song, it's going to churn out a generic pop punk song, and that you're going to end up with something very generic, and there's going to be literally millions of people doing that. And then I think the issue then comes down to how music is being released. And I think what's probably going to happen is the DSPs, the digital service providers, so the distributors, for anyone that doesn't know what a digital service provider is, if you want to release onto the streaming sites, you have to go through a digital service provider or a DSP. And I think the DSPs are going to have to kind of step in and go, okay, this is AI generated and this is human generated, and the two will work in a very different way, and the royalty system will have to change to fit that demographic in a way.
Yeah, sure.
But quite how you do that and who decide, we're going back to what's fair and what's not fair and all the rest of it. It's a very different way of doing things, and it's a very kind of it's almost like a very much an unknown space, and again, I think it's really going to come down to what the majors are doing and how they are going to look at this. What problem for some, but advantage for others. And at the moment, it
So now we
seems
got
to
a
be,
police AI, yeah.
yeah, possibly, or have some form of regulations, copyright regulation, or something like that. But at the moment, the major, or certainly two of the majors, seem to be coming more on the side of, well, if we can't beat them, we're going to have to join them, sort of thing.
Yeah, it's almost, see, I think the difference between AI and artists is that, you know, there's love and creativity, which play a big factor in music. I mean, there's no love with AI until it becomes sentient. Then it's a different ballgame altogether. You know, I think sometimes, hey, look, if inevitably we're heading towards, you know, the inevitable, then what will be. Because I just think it's us as people, we're not happy until like the it's the fan, and then they're like, oh, okay, well, all right, we'll scrape it off and clean it up, and we'll try something else. I'm just like, yeah, but if you knew it was going to happen, why didn't you do something about it? But so yeah, I mean, the other thing I was going to say, right, was like first, like just so people know, right, where my stance is on it, right, with regards to the AI and generating logos and artistic work and stuff. Okay, so
Yeah.
as soon as I was doing this, so I straight away I was like, okay. So I was questioning quite a few things because it's all very new to me. I'm all for going into a shop or meeting somebody and saying, "Hey, are you an artist? Are you a singer? Would you like to work with me?" And I can't. I've lost count of how many times I have been in contact with people online through the socials, mostly Instagram, particularly,
Yeah.
where I've seen people, artists, musicians, artists, not music based, but drawing and creativity, all that sort of stuff. I'm just like, okay, fine. And they produce this work, they turn the photograph around and going, cool, I got something here. Would you like to draw it for me? Silence.
Yeah.
Not DMing. And I'm like, right, okay. And I've contacted a few people whose artwork has popped up, and I think it would look great if they redesigned this particular piece of artwork that I've got,
Yeah.
that is of a real thing that's basically just been manipulated. So it's not AI generated in this one particular image. And I wanted somebody to recreate that for me using hand to paper. And everybody I contacted, there's one person was going, can you tell me what it is? I went, does it matter? I said, can you just replicate what it is? I've seen your artwork and it's very similar, which is quite freaky. Can you replicate it? I can.
Yeah.
But what is it? I'm like, why is that important? Does it matter? I said, look, how much do you charge for a print? I said, I need a high quality to send me. I normally charge X amount. I'm like, right, can you draw it? End of conversation. And then there's other people I've contacted to do work with me. And for the biggest part, it's like, oh, I'm way too busy or I can't. I'm like, here's me trying to support artists, real people.
Yeah.
And I didn't turn to AI because of that, okay, first and foremost. But my preference would always be to go to somebody physical, sit down, hands-on, talk to them, rather than get a machine to do it. Because I think personally, when you have that tactile contact and that social interaction with somebody else, you get a lot more out of it than just telling some computer-generated program to go do it for you. Okay, that's my personal opinion, and that's why I've done what I've done with the festivals and the music, because I wanted that hands-on contact with bands to basically say, look, I want to physically buy your merch. There's no way I can turn up to a gig with a full card of merchandise in the hundreds, because it would cost me thousands, right? So for each T-shirt you have to buy, and then get somebody else to print it off. Like, production cost is massive, so you only make £1 or £2 on a per T-shirt. So, but you've got them physically at the gig, and you have to look at it at some point and go, "I'm sorry, but this is something I'm gonna have to turn down." And I was just like, "Oh no way!" Like, because I'm a big advocate in merch. Again, it's a tricky one, isn't it?
It's a very tricky one, and you're right. It is expensive to produce merch, and there's no guarantee that you're going to sell it. I mean, I dread to think how many bands have like piles and piles of t-shirts and hoodies and whatever, like stuffed into cupboards and under beds and all the rest of it. Purely because they just have been unable to sell it. But it is one of those things that, again, you kind of have to change your mindset slightly and be, learn about e-commerce. Learn how.
I'm sick of hearing that word. Oh no! Jesus.
Exactly.
Commerce. Oh God. Well, maybe you could educate me about all that. Yeah.
Well, you do, but you're learning this because you've set up your Shopify stuff. That's what learning e-commerce is. So if you were to like employ someone to do e-commerce, that's the first thing they're going to do. They're going to set up the e-commerce shop, and they're going to look at what merchandise is going into it, what you're selling, and they're going to look at how they're going to advertise it and sell it.
Right on.
And that's what you're doing. So you're doing it in the right way. It's just the difference between the way that I do things, the way you're doing things, is that you're doing it yourself, and I'll find some muppet to do it for me.
Oh, bless.
Someone who's, I don't say muppet. That seems a bit harsh. But I'll find someone who knows how to do it, who has that experience, or is at least actively wanting to do that as a thing.
Oh, mate, just go and have a look in my inbox. There's about 1 million of them who keep messaging me. Take your pick.
Exactly. And then it comes down to, well, do you pay them? Do you find some other bartering system?
Well, that's all they want, really, isn't it?
Well, I'm always like, if you're that good, then you should be willing to put your money where your mouth is and offer them a percentage of the take. Give them, 5% or something like that. And, if they're that good, and maybe say to them, to start with, we'll give you a percentage. And once it's generating enough money for us to pay you, then that should be their incentive to actually do it.
Well, I have a very nice individual. He's definitely not a muppet. He's helped me so much with the shop and everything. He's been doing all the back end for me, trying to help navigate some of the issues I've been having. But I don't mind learning. But when you sometimes get to that point where you're like, do you know what? Yeah, I'm beat on this one. I need help. And he comes along and he's like, job done. There you go, all done. I'm like, what? When people just breeze through things and you're like, it makes me sick. Like, I struggle like no end to do certain things. And people are like, oh, it's easy. I'm like, yeah, thanks. Anyway, it's 6 hours trying to work it out, but whatever.
Yeah, exactly. It's one of those things. But they probably do it every day. And this is the thing.
He's just naturally
have
gifted.
That level of experience. Oh, he's a naturally gifted,
talented he's a very
individual.
naturally gifted and talented individual. So I'm very lucky.
That's even better.
I'm very lucky to know him, and he's a very humble chap, and he's helped me loads. So I cannot grumble.
Yeah, and I suppose this it brings it back to what the kind of CEO of Endel was saying about how he employs very talented engineers, software engineers, to generate the AI and to write the algorithms and all the rest of it. And why shouldn't they be recompensed in the same way that a talented musician or songwriter should be? And I kind of see where he's coming from, but for me, what worries me about this technology is that we're going to have people flooding of already very saturated marketplace, and the way the royalty system works and everything else, I think these guys at Endel have seen an opportunity to make a significant amount of money, and it's working. It must be working because they've got major label involvement. Sorry.
Yeah.
So, and they want a piece of that pie. Of course they do. They're a business. This is what people forget, is that major labels, or pretty much all record labels, they're a business. They're there to invest money and make a return on that investment. So it's one of those things. And they're also talking about having tools that can go into recording studios, that can be plugins that go onto your DAWs, like into Pro Tools or Logic or whatever. And you can then just sort of generate stuff, and it can become a part of your workflow, which I kind of like the idea. Anything that cuts down workflow. I would love a piece of AI that just did all my drum edits for me. That would be amazing.
Yeah.
It's one of those things that I'll do it. And it's kind of cathartic to, get everything sorted out. But would I prefer to just kind of click done? Yeah, because then I can actually do something more creative. It's enabling me to then, I could go and write a song. Yeah, it gives me more time. I did some drum edits the other day, and it took me like the best part of a day.
Yeah, I've seen the post for it.
Edits.
I think there should have been a few more there.
There should have been. Actually, that one post where I'm like, look at these drum edits. That's had like over 2,000 views on Instagram.
Nice.
Which is my normal TikTok numbers.
That's
not
good.
My Instagram numbers.
Yeah, AI does sort of take the workload off, but I think when you come to work on some stuff, I mean, since we're talking about AI, I mean, I'm using it now, but it's not to the point where I'm basically, right, one click off, I can go and do something else. I mean, this is what I do. So what else am I going to do? Like sit in front of the computer and doom scroll even more? It's like, well, I think it's all about balance, like we said previously. I think as long as you find a balance for what works. And like you said, I think a lot of these companies and businesses have just gone, see an opportunity. I hear it quite a lot in my job. It's like, we see an opportunity. I'm like, okay, that's good. But is that opportunity beneficial to the overall? Or is it just beneficial to like bringing in the dollars? You know what I mean?
Yeah, definitely. It's one of those things. And I think at the moment, this Endel app, I think there's a little bit of that at the very least. I like to give the benefit of the doubt to most, to be honest. I think maybe they started it with all good intentions, and then they saw an opportunity to make some money. Because obviously the app itself was developed, I think, long before they started working with established music artists, major music artists, before they started putting stuff out onto the streaming platforms and things like that. So I think they saw an opportunity to make some money, and they went for it. And it's one of those things, is that, can you blame someone for that? If you take the Shallow Souls, if the right deal came along from a record company and it was a great deal and they're going to give you a lot of money, would you turn that down? I suppose would be the question.
I would, personally. Well, I suppose it depends on what deal they're offering. I mean, it's what tends to happen with any kind of small label or big labels. They go, yeah, sure, we can get you out there if we like you. If you fit the trend, you're like, right, okay. So what have I got to do? It's like, well, give us 90%. You're like, no. I'm sorry, but I know there's a lot of bands that do it. Here's the other issue I have with it. So I've been doing it as long as you, and I think, is it worth the sacrifice? And that sacrifice is basically selling your soul for that short-term fame, which is what my contention is with the likes of Britain's Got Talent and all that stuff. Yeah, see, for me, I've been at it 20 years, like you. I'd rather sustain that and keep that going than just go, yeah, I want to get big and famous. Because it's like, well, it ain't going to last. You're going to burn out. I've seen it so many times. I've seen so many bands. They get there. We've lost so many through COVID. We've lost lows because they've just burnt out. I'm like, guys, you've got to find the balance. It's all about an equilibrium. Find the balance and manage it. And, I get it when some bands are not in that position to go, well, I'm no good. I'm no tech savvy. I'm no good with the internet. I just play music. It's like, that's fine. That's good. Do what you're good at. But
Yeah.
like, I don't think it's worth handing it all over just so you can get a shed ton of gigs.
Yeah, I agree. And yeah, I always say that quick success leads to a short career, especially in this industry, any creative industry. I think, if even you look at sort of television stuff like that, these TV reality stars, they're not going to be the next De Niro at the end of the day. I can't see them in their 60s, 70s, 80s still.
No.
Even 90s, if you look at Clint Eastwood, still making films, still directing film. Things that, again, it all comes down to the deal. It all comes down to what your objectives are, what you want, and what's presented to you. And if you want to grow in that way, then I think that's fine. That's your choice. I'm not going to tell anyone to not seize an opportunity purely because of my morals and what I think. And I agree with you. I think if you're going to build a career, you need to build it from the ground up. You need to have the foundations there. If you start building a career at the top, you're going to fall down very quickly.
Yeah, you are.
So it's one of those things, and there's going to be no one at the bottom that's going to sort of catch you and help you because you've not done the work. You've not worked with anyone at certain levels, as it were, to sort of help you through what will be the rough times at some point. Because any career, even if you're in a day-to-day job, 9 to 5 sort of thing, you're going to have ups and downs. There's going to be days where you just don't want to do it. Yeah, and that's part and parcel of it.
Well, and I think this is why there's a bit of a concern with Endel, is it, and what these guys are doing,
Endel,
and what we're talking about. The scene is highly saturated. They found a way to make money. The world's constantly looking for ways to make more money, and I think when you've got that drive and intention, it's the key to most of our survival. But when it starts becoming the main thing that drives people and motivates people, then you can already see the castle just crumbling down a little bit. And I think they're like, it's very good to argue it by saying, well, we do have engineers and why shouldn't they get paid? You're like, oh, absolutely. But let's really get down to the meat and potatoes of it. You found a great way. I mean, when you said earlier on about you got, was it drug gangs using the platform to launder money through? I'm just like, well, that's incredible. I mean, so people, like, nobody wants to pay taxes, right? Nobody wants to pay the government. Nobody wants to do all that stuff. And yet we are. So they're like, right, well, how can I make enough money to survive and get away with that aspect so I get a bit more money? So they look constantly, everybody's looking for little loopholes, and they go, oh, great. If we do this right, sit down with a plan, sit down with an idea, great. We could probably make X amount of money. Cool, that's what we'll do. And then we'll market it up and sugarcoat it with the idea of like, oh yeah, no, we're actually helping people with insomnia and anxiety. And you're like, yeah, very clever, very clever. Yes, you are. But come on, let's play the game. You're playing the game, like, and they're like, well, why not? You're like, but now you've put pressure on Spotify. We're going to look at that and go, okay, that's a bit of a concern. They're making a bit more money than they really should. It's like, well, hang on a minute. How can you make more money if it works? So then they go, well, I'll tell you what we'll do. We'll change our terms and conditions. And now, as artists, me and you, we're finding the brunt of that now, because they're like, well, instead of paying you 0.0.2, we're going to pay you 0.0.1. And then, well, with that, we'll change the terms and conditions. And we're like, right, so why are we on this platform again?
Yeah, and that's the other thing. The platforms don't exist without artists at the end of the day. And there's a part of me that, and this is my own personal opinion, I can't see that the major labels are getting the same rate as you and me. I just don't think that's a thing. I think they're going to get a better deal. And if not, they're probably, maybe they get the same deal, but they have some sway with playlisting and stuff like that, especially the editorial stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're a bit like, we've got this song coming out.
Stick it at the top.
Make sure you put it. Yeah, make sure it's number one on this playlist. And
this is why me and you will never stand a chance.
It is, yeah, and it's one of those things. But the argument would be, and kind of the sort of cut to the chase of it, Spotify would turn around and say, well, if you don't like it, don't put your music up there. There's plenty of other places you can put your music. And it's one of those things, it's like, it's difficult because they've got such a big market share. But there's also, I think there's an element here of the AI could have a small silver lining. Okay, I was thinking about this earlier, that, and I hate to use this expression, but it could sort the men from the boys, because the AI is only going to be generating generic stuff. It's because it's not sentient, it's not creative. All it's doing is putting out what's already put. And I've got a friend who's got a PhD in computer science, and he said we're nowhere near any of that. The technology just isn't there for that. So it's not something to be concerned about. It's something that can be, but it's firmly in science fiction as opposed to science fact.
I'm skeptical.
He works for the government as well.
He's
kind of got his thumb on this sort of stuff.
Well, that's fine.
I think that the AI is only ever going to be as good as what's pumped into it for whatever it churns out.
Sure.
And obviously the level of production and things like that's going to be, certainly in our world, if something's not produced very, or if it's overproduced as well, it's not going to cut it. And there's the other element in our world of the live shows and things like, an AI is not going to be, it's not going to, some software engineer is not going to start churning stuff out. Who's going to go to that show? Like some software engineer with a laptop.
Hey, well, they're already doing shows showing dead artists like Tupac and Michael Jackson on stage in basically like Project Bluebeam form. So like people are there going, yeah, and you're like, there's nobody there. It's just a digital system that's been created to give the illusion that somebody is there. And it's packed out.
Certainly from a production point of view and from an audience-based point of view, it's going to really kind of sort out, if you're producing music that's creative, then the AI, I wouldn't be worried about it, to be honest with you. The only thing I would be worried about is, like I said, the royalty system and how people are paid and all the rest of it, and the saturation of the market itself. But if you're doing something that's very creative and engaging anyway, you're going to cut way above anything that an AI is going to produce, certainly at the moment. Until that AI becomes sentient, which it may do, may never do, who knows?
You know it's coming. We've all seen the films. Come on.
We've seen the films, yeah. And it might do.
But it'd be a shame if it did.
Until that happens... I've honestly, if we're going to go by the films, the last thing we should be worried about is Spotify numbers. At the end of the day, I'd be more worried about the bombs dropping. Bad Life Podcast!